Hello, this is Debbie Clemenzi with Health One Technologies. I'm here to give you an overview of our immunizations form, which was created by Health One Technologies. This form can be used as a standalone form, or it can be included in a set of forms. The first tab you'll see is the Review Orders tab. This allows the staff to verify and review all vaccines that have previously been given to this patient and determine what vaccines may be needed for today. The first section you'll see is the vaccine ordered by. You have the ability to select the provider that's ordering the vaccines for today, if there are any. Below this is your VFC status, which defaults to not VFC eligible, depending on how your form is set up for your practice and your workflow. You may have to select and verify by checking off this checkbox. This particular form already defaults to being not VFC eligible. Down below this, we have radio buttons, which tell you the age of the patient. This is populated based on the patient's age. So this patient's 46 years old. It automatically selects the radio button for you as an adult. Down below, you'll see the patient has received varicella, hepatitis A, hepatitis B, influenza, and tetanus. Over here on the right-hand side, we have a details button. This will give you details regarding each of the vaccines. The details for the varicella. This was a historical vaccine which was entered using the preload tab on this form, and it gives you the series along with the historical information and the date that it was administered. Down below, under the hepatitis B, you'll see there's a red asterisk. This red asterisk will indicate that there has been a prior adverse reaction to this vaccine. So if I select the details button for this, you'll see in here, along with the vaccine name, the date it was administered, the series, the dose, the route, the lot and expiration, and who administered the vaccine, along with the adverse reaction information and what the adverse reaction was. Once you've determined which vaccines need to be administered at this visit, you would go ahead and order the vaccines down below. So this patient for today, we're going to go ahead and enter a second hepatitis A and a second hepatitis B. So I would select both of these options. And to move to the Give Vaccines tab, you can either select the Give Vaccines button down here, or you can go to the tab by using the tab up here at the top. Once you are in the Give Vaccine tab, you'll notice that the vaccines that were ordered will display here under the Vaccines Ordered, and all of your information that you've completed up here previously will default to the second tab. When you're ready to administer the vaccines, you would go ahead and select the drop-down under Give Vaccine number 1 and select the vaccine that you'd like to administer. Once you've selected your vaccine, we need to go into the inventory and actually select the lot number and expiration date of the vaccine that you're administering for today. These are maintained by location of care and are entered using our inventory management form by the person who manages the inventory. So once I select the Get Available Lot button, you'll see that any lots that have been entered will go ahead and populate under the Enter Immunization Data. So for this purpose, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to select the private purchase. And once I've selected this, I'm going to use the selected lot. And this will populate all the information which you should verify with your vial and be sure that all the lot numbers and expirations, etc., are accurate. The next button that you will have to populate in this form is the site that it was administered and the series. So this, you'll notice, already populated to series number 2 because if you recall, they've already had number 1. So it will default to the next number in the series. If this is incorrect and maybe they already had another vaccine and you want to make this number 3 or number 1, whatever you need to do. In this particular item, there's only 2 vaccines for hepatitis A, so it will only display 1 or 2. So I'm going to leave it as 2, and I'm going to go ahead and record my vaccine. In order to do this, you're going to select the Record Data Orders button. And what this will do is write to the observation term for this vaccine. It will also write to the immunization table, which will qualify for the registry, and it will also add the billing order so that this can be billed at the end of the visit. So now we have hepatitis A, and this is the billing order. The next vaccine is going to be your hepatitis B. Again, I need to get the available lot. Before I do that, I just want to mention there's a couple of other buttons available here. You can view the history of the vaccines. So again, we can look at the last vaccine. This was the one that had an adverse reaction. So if you wanted to look at this again and see which vaccine it was, you can do so from this View History button. You can print the vaccine screen ABN, and you can also document if the patient declines the vaccine. Once you select the checkbox, this will populate the group, the vaccine type, and the series, and the reason it was not given today. All of this will need to be populated in order for the Record Data Orders to populate. So if I go ahead and select these, now you'll see the Record Data Orders populates. Additionally, once you have completed this, you need to always remember to select this Record Data Orders. If you need to print the declination form, there's a print button right here, which you can go ahead and print for the patient to sign. I'm going to go ahead and uncheck the declined because I want to administer this vaccine. So again, I have my available lot. So I will select the Engerix B. And again, all the information will populate within the immunization data. You have options to select borrowed from private and borrowed from state if that happens to be the case with this immunization. So again, I have to select the site that it was administered and the series. So if I select from the drop-down, because hepatitis B has different options as far as how many are administered, you'll see that we have up to 6 different series numbers. So if for any reason maybe the patient had one at the hospital and it wasn't documented, and this is actually the 3rd vaccine, you could go ahead and change this to number 3 if this was actually number 3 versus number 2. I'm going to leave it as 2. And once I've completed all these fields, again, you'll see that the Record Data Orders button has up. You'll see that the vaccine has been entered under the orders. And this has also been written to the observation term and to the immunization table for reporting to the registry. The final step to entering your vaccines is this yellow button for recording the immunization administration piece. So the last thing you need to do is select Record Immunization Admin. Before I do that, I would just like to point out one more button down below under each of these, and you can undo a vaccine once you have entered all the information. Even though I've recorded the data in the orders, I can go ahead and I can remove this now and undo it. If I were to select undo, this will remove all of the fields that I've populated, and it will also ask me to go to the flow sheet and return me to the flow sheet so that I can remove any of the observations that were written to the flow sheet. And it will also remove it from the immunization table so that it doesn't report it to the registry. So I'm going to go ahead and record the immunization admin piece, and you'll see now that an order has been entered for the vaccine immunization for 2 vaccines. So it's very important that the last thing you do is to select that yellow button. If you only had 1 vaccine, you would enter it after the 1 vaccine, but when you have multiple, you want to be sure you enter it after the final vaccine has been recorded. We have another vaccine page, which will allow up to 3 more vaccines. So each vaccine tab will allow 3 vaccines. So the first 3, and then under Give Vaccine 2, you have the second 3 sets of vaccines. The next tab is your TB and PPD tab. This will allow you to enter the TB for the patient. So I'm going to go ahead and get an available lot and enter this information. Once you've selected the lot number, again, you have to enter your site and who planted the PPD. So I'm going to go ahead and select user, which will populate my name. And again, the record data order. And again, now you'll see that the PPD has been entered under the new orders. The second half of the form is where you would enter the results of the PPD test. So in a couple of days or whatever your practice workflow is, you would come into this immunization form and you would go ahead and enter the results for the PPD. If this has already been signed off by the time the patient comes back in for the PPD to be read, you would just pull in the immunization form under a clinical list update or whatever your practice has decided will be the best workflow and enter the results under the PPD piece. So you would select low or high risk, and planted would be 1020. If you needed to change that, you could select change, and this will give you the option to change the date and save it. We're going to deselect this, and we're going to go ahead and update the PPD results button. Once you've done that, you would select the date that the PPD was read, the size, if there's any size applicable, and if it's negative, positive, or indeterminate. So I'm going to go ahead and select negative and save. Once you've selected save, your interpretation has been recorded. The next tab you'll come to is your safety tab. If your practice workflow is to review these safety questions with the patient, you would go ahead and run through all these questions prior to administering the vaccine. So you can select all negative. This will populate all the questions except for the "Are you currently pregnant?" You would manually need to answer this question. So once I select no, I would be finished completing the questions, and these would populate into the note of the visit. If I want to clear them all, I would select the clear button. The next tab is your preload tab. This allows you to enter any vaccines that may previously have been administered, whether it was at a hospital or another provider. So I'm going to go ahead and select flu immunization. You'll see the influenza will populate. You have an instructions button, which will give you the enter historical immunization, select the vaccine group. It tells you how to actually enter the historical vaccine. So I have vaccine history 10/3/16. I'm going to select from the drop-down historical information from other provider. You have several options to select from. Series will always be one with a vaccine for influenza. You would select your vaccine and the date that it was administered. Once you've populated all the information on the historical source, you would select your record button. Go ahead and select yes. And now you have recorded the vaccine immunization for 10/13/2015. The next tab is your Edit Adverse Reactions tab. If I wanted to make a change to any of the vaccines that were given previously, I would select the vaccine over here on the left-hand side, select the refresh. If I want to change Engerix administered on 10/20, this will populate down below. Any of the fields over here on the right-hand side can be changed. So if I wanted to change the series to number 3, select 3, and then you would go ahead and select the update button, and this will populate and correct the series to number 3. You will have to, if you need to make any changes, have to go to the flow sheet and make any changes on the flow sheet as needed. The second is your adverse reaction options. If you needed to record an adverse reaction, you would select your immunization, select the date of the adverse reaction along with the reaction comments, and again you would select your update button. And lastly, you can remove a vaccine. You would select the vaccine again and hit your refresh and go ahead and select entry error and remove. Once you select remove, this will update the table and it will return you to the flow sheet to remove the vaccine so it's not recorded on the flow sheet as well. The last tab you'll see is the text tab. This will allow you to remove and delete any text that you may not want within the document. This concludes the immunization form review.